Today on Cooking the Books with Heather, we are going to make cilantro lime sweet corn. I'm not going to show you how to cut corn off the cob because I'm pretty sure with hoarding corn, also from the same book, this is from Deep Run Roots, by the way, did a lot of cutting corn off the cob, and in another recipe that we did after that. So we've seen corn cutting off the cob before, but this recipe starts with a compound butter. Now I did neglect to soften my butter ahead of time, so I used the microwave and it got a little melty but not bad. So we're going to start with some unsalted butter. I was thinking the whole time that I was going to use the salted butter that I keep some on the counter all the time, and we go through it fast enough that it doesn't go bad on the counter even in the summer. But then I realized that probably should use unsalted butter because the recipe does have salt in it. So speaking of, we're going to add some salt. That's still about right. Great day today. This is cilantro. Again, cilantro lime corn. This is lime juice and zest. So basically all of the lime that's required in the recipe. And this is something that you can put together beforehand, and it will be good for, a while in the refrigerator. It can just sit around and wait. And that is it. And now we're just going to pulse this in a food processor until it all sort of comes together. One thing I didn't say was that the cilantro is both the stems and the leaves, so I didn't have to bother pulling everything pulling all the leaves off of the stems. Looks like this is not, I don't feel like this is going to come together, but I guess we'll see. I feel like it's not enough butter for all of this liquid to actually get absorbed and put in it. So I'm going to try not pulsing it. See if that helped. Maybe a little bit. I mean, it doesn't really matter because this is all going to get melted into the corn afterwards. So if this was just a compound butter that we were going to put on something, I would not leave it like this. I'm going to try one more time and then we're just going to leave it because, like I said, we're just going to put this on top of the corn when it's hot and it's going to melt into it. So, all right. Yeah. As I suspected, that does not all come together into a compound butter like I was expecting. Compound butter is usually just looks like butter with stuff in it, but there was a lot of lime juice, so there was almost as much lime juice as there was butter, and so I think it just isn't going to come together. So I'm just going to leave it like that, and when we put it into the corn is kind of juicy, and so I think it'll be fine. So I'm going to store this in the refrigerator, partially because it is so liquid and also because we're going to melt it into the hot corn anyway, so it doesn't really matter, and I just don't want the liquid to, I don't know, evaporate, get more brownish, greenish than it is. I don't know, but I'm going to put it in the refrigerator, so we'll be back when it's time to cook the corn. So we've made our compound butter, and now all we have to do is cook the corn. This is a very simple step, honestly. I do have to say she suggested 8 ears of corn for 4 cups. I had 9 ears of corn, but I measured it as I cut them off, and I had 4 cups at like 5 or 6 ears. But I used all 9, so I might have a little bit more corn to butter ratio, but I'm sure it will be fine. I've got the corn here in a dry pan. It's not on, it's just all by itself. And all I'm doing is adding water. It just looks cloudy because I used the same measuring cup that I put the corn in, so that I measured the corn in. And some salt. And all we have to do is bring this up to a simmer and let it cook for about 15 minutes. And what we're trying to do is make sure that this water cooks down until it's only about 2 tablespoons. She says what you're looking for is moist corn that's not super wet and not dry. So that's what we'll be doing. And then she also suggests that you add the butter, because that's all we do, is you add the compound butter as close to serving time as possible. So we're going to cook this for a while and then just sort of let it sit on low heat until we're about ready to eat, and then we're going to add the butter. And yeah, that's it. It's pretty simple if you don't count cutting the corn off the cobs, which is messy. So now we just wait. So the corn has been cooking for probably at least 20 minutes at this point to get down to this the correct amount of liquid I'm estimating. And now we're going to add the compound butter that kind of didn't all become compound butter, but it'll work. So we're going to add this. It's been in the refrigerator, so it's cold. And we're going to stir it up, and it should make kind of a thick sauce with the liquid that was left in there. Speaking of the liquid that was left in there, I could have used cornstarch if I had it, but I have still not made it. So if you remember from the Frogmore Steam episode, I did not make it for that, and I did not make it for this. And when we were hoarding corn, we had enough to do that I didn't make it then either. So hopefully sometime this summer I will make the cornstalk and use it in something, but for now we're gonna make do with water, which she said was an acceptable substitute. So you see that's sort of becoming a little bit of a sauce. I'm going to let this cook down a little bit more just so it gets a little bit thicker. I think with all that lime juice in there, it's just a bit much liquid, but that is pretty much it, and I'll show you guys the finished product. On this episode of Cooking the Books with Heather, we made cilantro lime sweet corn from the Deep Run Roots cookbook. The picture's really tiny. You'd probably not be able to see it on here, but you'll get pictures of mine. This recipe was actually really easy. Probably the hardest part is cutting corn off the cob, which is just messy and a little bit annoying. But it was super easy. However, it did require making a compound butter in a food processor. I'm not sure that part was actually required, and it did not turn out very well for me. All of the lime juice did not incorporate into the butter, and I just felt like it wasn't going to incorporate into the butter. And then since it was all going to melt anyway, I decided it wasn't worth it to try to make it all incorporate into the butter. So that part was a little, I don't know, either misleading or I did something wrong or something. But even though that didn't work out, the dish itself turned out just fine. It was delicious. Everybody loved it. So it's definitely a keeper. Honestly, I probably wouldn't make it a compound butter next time. I would probably just add the butter and all of the stuff into the hot corn right before I served it. I think that was the butter, salt, lime zest, and lime juice with the cilantro and the cayenne, all that stuff that went into the compound butter, I think could easily go into the corn without being mixed up previously. So I think that was an extra step that was not entirely necessary. Now, perhaps because I did something wrong or it didn't turn out for me, maybe the corn would have turned out slightly differently, maybe creamier with it. But either way, we enjoyed it. It was fine. Flavors were good. So I would definitely make it again. So that's it for this episode, and thank you for watching. Come back every week. We have a new recipe for you from this book and other books, and please remember to subscribe.